Hey everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to the Division 2. And today, the Div 2 team has just dropped the developer notes for Year 8 Season 3 Red Horizon. If you don't know what these are, after each public test server phase for the game, the devs drop their notes on what happened. Basically, they've looked at all the feedback that they got, made some changes based on it, and are delivering us their thoughts in a presented format. So, in this we have updates about the determined Iron Whale situation. They're delivering a good amount of buffs to the new gear that is coming in with Red Horizon, and on top of a few other things, this gives us a clear picture of what we can expect when this new season launches sometime soon. We still don't have an exact date, but yeah, as always, we're going to read through it together, and then we can all give our thoughts. So, if you enjoyed this one, you don't want to miss out on more coverage for the new season whenever that may come around, be sure to subscribe. Huge shout out and thank you to all of our channel members as always. I cannot thank you all enough for your unending support of myself and the channel. It means the world. Thank you so much. But alright, let's get to these dev notes. Okay, so here we are with the Red Horizon PTS developer notes. Now, as always, the link for these will be down in the description below in case you want to give them a read for yourself. They have dropped these very early in the morning for where I'm at. I gave them a brief squint right when I woke up, but let's give them a read together here and see what we've got. So, starting off hot here with the determined talent and marksman rifles topic. So they're going to give some greater context here on everything that is going on and their final decision after the PTS. So let's see what they have to say. Determined was one of the most discussed changes during the PTS, and the feedback around it was divided. Some of you supported the change and wanted to see more options for marksman rifle builds, while others asked us to leave it as is. I will say, right off the bat, whichever side of this discussion you may be on, at least they acknowledged that there were two sides and that they were pretty split, because that was what I saw personally. Let's see what they decided. One of the main reasons we wanted to make this change is the interaction between the current version of Determined and Headhunter. Once Determined is active, a body shot converted into a headshot can trigger Determined again if it kills the enemy. Combined with Headhunter, this allows the chain to continue after the initial headshot kill. This also leaves us with less room to improve marksman rifles and any related gear, because increasing their damage can make that Determined and Headhunter setup even stronger. They say another reason, and one that is just as important, is the work we are doing on the endgame beyond Red Horizon. We have more additions planned for you, and part of preparing for that means addressing some of the balancing issues and meta outliers that can limit what we can do. Determined is one of those cases. I'm sure most of you just care about what they're saying on Determined right here, but this is an interesting tease, what we're doing on the endgame beyond Red Horizon. We have more additions planned, so I'm curious if that's on the content side or the balancing side, but anyway, let's continue. That is why, after reviewing the feedback, we've decided to move forward with the change to Determined. Doing this now gives us more freedom to add and improve things in the future for everyone. With the final version, Determined will function like Perfect Determined, meaning that a converted headshot kill will no longer re-trigger the talent, but the current chaining functionality is not disappearing completely. It is moving to the new Iron Whale exotic chest, freeing up a weapon talent slot so that you can use it with exotic marksmans, high-end marksmans with a different talent, as well as pistols like the Regulus and the Harvest. So we already knew this about the Iron Whale chest and some of the combinations that are possible with it. I think specifically some of those combinations with exotic items like the Prima Donna, the Mantis, the Regulus are going to be quite strong with this chest, but it is a change nonetheless, right? They say we also heard the feedback from those who rely on Determined because marksman rifles can feel difficult to use without it. This is something we want to address as well. We are looking into a handling pass for marksman rifles and rifles to make them feel better to use, although we do not have a timeline to share for that yet. I will say this is definitely encouraging. I think that handling on marksmans, but specifically rifles, is part of what makes them so unappealing to use over the other conventional options. Also, I know many have pointed out that they really need to buff up the rifle 2-piece bonus. That crit damage value is just too low to be good, so hopefully we see some of those changes made, but I'm definitely liking the sound of them doing this. They close out by saying the upcoming Red Horizon season will also include buffs to marksman rifle related sets and brands, including Hotshot and Aces and Eights, as well as increases to MMR damage bonuses on brand sets. We want to give marksman builds more options rather than having so much of their strength tied to one talent combination. This was one of the harder decisions coming out of the PTS, and we know not everyone will agree with it. After reviewing the feedback and looking at where we want to take the game next, we believe this is the right decision to make. We still want to thank everyone who took the time to explain what Determined means to their builds and how they use it. Okay, so there you go. Determined changes moving forward. The Iron Will is coming to the game. I will say, once again, regardless of which side you may fall on, I do like that they have acknowledged that not everybody is going to agree with their change. At least they know this going in. But I do think that despite people talking about lower damage numbers than when they had Headhunter using the Iron Will, I do think you're going to find some very strong combinations that still work in a lot of variety of content. The buffs to some of these gear sets, including Hotshot, are pretty significant, including the brand stuff as well. So we'll see in practice. As always, continue giving your feedback on stuff once the season actually goes live. That is what we have for now on Determined. There is a change coming to the Iron Will as well, so let's move on to the new weapons and gear section. They say a lot to the feedback around gear and weapons focused on some of the new options not feeling strong enough in practice. Here are the changes we've made based on what we saw during the test. So the new Boiling Point weapon talent has been buffed up to the point of where I think it could start being pretty viable again. So the standard version is the portion of the magazine with the negative 100% crit chance has been reduced from 80 to 53. And if you didn't know what this did, it means that that remaining 47% will have 100% crit chance. So that's going to be pretty good. And then for the perfect version, that portion is reduced further to 48%. All right, on the new Ember Engine gear set, the burn application chance has gone up to 40%. And I believe it was the chest piece that further increased that chance. That's now up to 60%. All right, now for the Fafnir shotgun, this one actually got a pretty huge buff right here. I thought they were going to do some different changes, but the chance to apply burn has gone up from 10 to 40. That should feel a lot better. That chance was definitely what was holding it back previously. But I thought in compensation, they might then reduce the total damage bonus that you get from it. But no, the weapon scaling from status effect bonus has been increased from 30% amp damage to 50. That's pretty nuts. I'll be curious to see what the PvP scaling on that is. Otherwise, I'm going to have some concerns about this item in the DZ and conflict. But for the PvE version here, I mean, this should make it dramatically better. If you want to run a Hunter's Fury fire build and have some pretty wild amp damage when those enemies are ignited, you now can. So yeah, I'm curious to see what people will do with that. Now we get to the Iron Will chest piece. So this is kind of a follow-up of that previous section that we were talking about. In PvE, they've increased the cooldown on the talent from 1 to 2 seconds. Now I have to say, for the purposes that I would ever use this chest piece for, the cooldown at this low of a timer basically means nothing. With a marksman, I'm rarely going to be hitting enemies like once every second, let alone 1 every 2 seconds. It takes a moment to rechamber, find my next target. That said, if you're using this with rifles, for example, then that would change things a lot more, because with them being full auto, you can just stay on target, continue hitting body shots and chain headshots, but that's now only going to happen once every 2 seconds. In PvP, the cooldown is only 3 seconds. Once again, a lot like the Fafnir that we just talked about, I'm concerned about this thing in PvP. I think the ability to hit a headshot from a nemesis anywhere on the body every 3 seconds is going to be problematic. I hope to be proven wrong, and I'll give it a fair shake once it launches, but yeah, we'll see how that does. All right, Incinerator turrets, they've reduced the base cooldown on this thing from 60 to 30 seconds. This inherently isn't like receiving any changes or new gear this season. I think they just did it because of the fire theme and how awkward that cooldown was to begin with, so that's nice to see. On the Araldi brands, they have buffed the 2-piece headshot damage from 13 to 26%. Similarly, on 3-piece of Grupo, they have buffed it to 39%, and they have reverted the brand changes that were proposed for the Murakami brand. So the 2-piece is reverted back to 35% repair skills, and the 3-piece back to 18% skill damage. All right, let's move on to talk about the seasonal modifiers. A lot of the feedback during the test was about the pressure gauge and how quickly it decayed compared to how long it could take to build. We also saw that keeping the gauge up could feel harder in group play, which I'm glad to hear. That was one of my biggest complaints about it. So based on that feedback, we made the following changes. For the pressure gauge, a decay has now been made less aggressive and will start later. They've also buffed up some of the actions that build pressure, including a new group kill action. You will now gain 1% pressure whenever another player in your group gets a kill. I think that's great. It was very needed. Once again, whenever I tried this in a group on the PTS, it just felt severely more restrictive and harder to build compared to when I was solo. So I think in combination, all those things should be pretty good. Talking about hostile modifiers, for Achilles heel, the pressure gauge loss from breaking an armor piece or weak point has been reduced from 10 to 5. And on draining presence, the radius is down from 7 to 5. For active modifiers, they said we also heard that active mods themselves themselves need more impact, so all three have received buffs. Fiery Aura, which is like the new replacement for Zealot or Invincible this season. Armor regen is now percentage based, ranging from 0.5% to 1.5%. Also, if you level it all the way up, the damage resistance it offers while sprinting can now reach 100%. The burn duration that you apply to enemies has been increased, and at level 5, armor regen per unique enemy burned has been increased to 15%. On Vicarious Combustion, which was the one that I felt needed the most amount of buffs, it just felt pretty weak. Comparatively, they've doubled the range of the headshot effect. The burn penalty has gone down from 50 to 25 and 50 to 10. The burn duration has been slightly reduced, but also the cooldown of its level 5 effect has been reduced. And then finally on Signed, Shield and Delivered, which I'm excited to run with the Flamethrower. Seems like a very fun combo. The shield health and shield active regen have been increased. Alright, a couple of things to talk about here under Dark Zones in PvP, beginning with the new Blackout Dark Zone. Recall that this is the one where you're going to be able to use your prototype gear and all of its power, as well as earn prototype gear from loot drops. So, they said you told us Blackout enemies were going down a little too easily, which I agree with. They just didn't quite feel like they were up to the challenge of prototype gear. They've taken the feedback personally and will be tougher in the season release. Good. Additionally, prototype gear and weapon drop rates have been adjusted, so for normal enemies, they now have a 0.2% chance to drop prototype items with mid stat rolls. Elite enemies have a 0.5% at a mid roll and a 0.2% for high stat rolls. And then finally, boss enemies have a 1% chance to drop at mid stat rolls and 2% chance to drop at high stat rolls. I believe all of those values are up, including the new chance to get it from normal enemies, so prototype drops in the Blackout DZ are going to be happening. They've also gone and added the Ortiz Refugiere, Caduceus, and Nurse's knee pads to the special loot pool in the PvP DZs. Alright, after reviewing your feedback about the PvP balance pass, keep in mind that this season is bringing the big skill rebalance that we've been waiting for. They say we've made some adjustments to skills, talents, gear, and brand set bonuses. We saw that tier 6 fire-based skill builds could become too strong in PvP when combined with Ember Engine, so we've made some PvP specific adjustments to the set. I will say that this was my experience. I put together a fire sticky bomb build with Ember Engine because we know how that is the most problematic skill in PvP, has been for a long time, and it felt pretty much identical, if not more powerful compared to what we have in the live game now, which seemed problematic to me if they were doing a skills balance pass this season to begin with. So, on Ember Engine, in PvP specifically, the chance to apply burn is 8% with plus 8% burn damage if the effect initially applied was burn. Using Flashpoint, that increases the burn application chance to 12%, and using White Hot, that will increase the burn damage debuff to 12%. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a little bit skeptical about it. I don't think it's Ember Engine's fault specifically, like in terms of values. I think they could tune them all down to 1% and it would still be problematic. It's really just the strength of fire and the burn sticky bomb, but we will see how it shakes out. We've also heard concerns around the strength of several bonus armor talents. Bloodsucker, Unbreakable Protected Reload, and Adrenaline Rush have all received some adjustments. They say for the full breakdown, check out the PvP set bonus and talents rebalance and PvP skill rebalance sheets, which all of those can be found within patch notes on the Division 2's official website. I'm of the mind that armor regen and kind of survivability based builds in the current sandbox are still a bit stronger than they should be for how much damage they can achieve, so I'm glad to see these changes. We'll see where things land though. A whole lot of stuff has been tuned down, and I think currently you're seeing a lot of players trying to find what is that thing that still feels strong to run, so we'll see how all of this feels in practice. Finally, under PvP stat display, some of you also reported that PvP stats were not always displayed clearly while checking your builds. Starting with Red Horizon, your inventory will show your PvP weapon damage directly below the PvE value, and your displayed stats will automatically switch to their PvP values when you enter any PvP environment. You will also be able to check your PvP normalization stats and PvP balance overrides in the shooting range by activating the PvP switches. They say as part of these changes, the inventory normalization button will temporarily be removed while we update the UI. Sounds mostly good. My only real gripe with some of this system is that there is not currently a way to display what happens when you enter a PvP environment that removes your Shade Watch stats. I think having that toggle within the inventory would be a huge bonus so that you can see what's going to happen when you lose your 10% crit chance, 20 crit damage in Conflict or the normalized DZ. Maybe that kind of a toggle can take over the previous inventory normalization, though, if they're going to be doing all this. But there we have it, the Division 2 team. That is the end of the Red Horizon dev notes for the PTS. You're now up to speed on everything to expect when this new season launches. Well, there you go, folks. Those are the Red Horizon PTS developer notes. I will be very curious to hear your thoughts on everything that we went over. I'm sure the comments are going to be flooded about Determined, Iron Will, that whole situation. Let me know what you're thinking. But then additionally on some of those other changes as well, including the buffs to new gear. What do you think about that? I'm very curious to see how the Fafnir performs both in PvE and PvP, but I think alongside Boiling Points, those were probably the standouts to me. Let me know what you're thinking on any of it though, and yeah, bring on Red Horizon. It seems to be right around the corner. That's going to do it for me on this one. Thank you all so much for coming by and watching, and until I see you next, RogueGold. Ow. Oh! We just got a Ravenous! I might not be friendly. Let's go.
Coming to the Division 2.
Let's go!
And